So I have another image that I isolated, and that's going to be a flower. So right now it looks like it's just a floating flower. It has no place. So we're going to use drop shadows to make sure it finds a home on this background. So I'm going to do what we've done with the previous object, and I'm going to add a new layer. And I'm going to grab my paintbrush tool. This is going to be my shadow layer. I've got my paintbrush tool, and I'm going to draw where I think the shadow will be cast. So I'm seeing kind of some a light source kind of coming from this direction. You can see the light kind of hitting this side of the stem. So I'm just going to play with that and go with that kind of light source coming down here. So if the light source is coming from the top, it's going to cast shadows right around here, maybe just a very sliver down the stem, and it's also going to cast a shadow that goes out on the little leaf here. So let's do up here a little bit. And let's put our shadow layer behind, and we're just guessing right now where it would go. I'm just doing big block and always erase my shadows a little bit later. Just do a little bit up here. These are really archaic at the moment, but we'll fine tune it a little bit better later. So let's reduce the opacity a little bit, and let's fine tune our shadow. Let me see if I can zoom in. There we go, perfect. So that's actually not bad. We do need to kind of make the shadow that's cast by this leaf a little bit more the same shape. So let's do that. Let's grab our eraser tool, and let's go ahead and erase a little bit of this. And we don't need any shadow here. So if I did any shadow on this side, we can go ahead and delete that for right now. Kind of go in. I could do my 50% opacity. Oh, it's already on 40% opacity, so I can blend and feather. It looks a little bit better. So that's already looking like a pretty decent shadow. Probably don't need as much shadow here, simply because, whoops, we don't need as much shadow here because it's just the stem being cast down here. So let me delete that. Any shadows here? We don't need shadows here. So that's pretty good. I think we can make our shadow even darker. So let's go back and increase the opacity just a tad. And the darker you make the shadow, the more impact it has. So you can see how that looks. And let me delete a little bit here. That was a little too fat of a shadow. And I think there's still some shadow being cast here. You can see how realistic that looks. Let's just back it off one notch, maybe right about here. So it does, it looks like it's laying flat on the ground and that you have a light source coming from the top here. And there might be a little bit of a shadow cast here, right there in that area. So let's see how that looks. So I'm just going to draw a little bit of a shadow. Let's get our paintbrush tool, maybe one right there. We can always take our eraser tool and fine tune it. Maybe it's just a tiny shadow. Maybe it's just like a very little bit from that back part, maybe casting, maybe this flower blocks the light a little bit there and casts a shadow. So that is one way. Maybe we can come in, tighten that a little bit. We do a very, very subtle feathering here. So I'm not deleting all of it. I'm just deleting maybe 15% here. Perfect. I think that looks fantastic. Let's zoom out. Let me back the shadow off just a little bit, make it a little more opaque. I think it no longer looks like it's floating in the middle of the sea here. It looks like it's a little more ingrained in the background. It looks like it's really, it's not a floating flower in the middle of nowhere. So I love this shadow. We're going to try a different type of shadow with this flower next.